Just want to acknowledge that that film may have brought up some stuff for folks. So just a reminder to take care of yourself, take a breath, get some water if you need to. And once again, thank you, Mary Lou Smith, for sharing your story with us. Mary Lou was generous enough in her intro to share a little bit about how, her experience has impacted her family and substance use and loss as a result. So I think at this point we're going to just sort of begin a conversation around any questions you may have that the film has brought up. And I just want to kind of frame and reiterate Mary Lou Smith's own words, and that she is, looking for your love and compassion and not your judgment, and not in a position to, defend or explain the actions of her life. So I just want to say that really clearly. And then we're really fortunate to have Rebecca here to speak to some of the larger issues that may come up as well. So. This is when we'll just kind of take some questions that either Mary Lou or Rebecca will respond to.
Thank you. The question that came to my mind was listening to how you went to therapy, and I was just wondering if your kids were able to go to therapy, or if there's any type of help that the kids who went through that, living in that kind of family, that they can have. Thank you.
I think Mary Lou can speak to how therapy was helpful for her if she would like to. I would just say that our services are different from therapy in that what we do, we're advocates through these doors. None of us, we don't do clinical therapy. But advocacy support, I think, can help people once they've identified and call us as I think at that point, most people sort of have started to identify with the fact that they're living in abuse. Mary Lou's experience was her therapist actually helped her see that, which I think is remarkable because it sounds like in Mary Lou's life, she was not going to pick up and call the helpline because she was not identifying herself as a victim of abuse.
And I really wasn't honest with therapists for years. Once it got tough, and they said things that I might have to do, I would just find a new therapist or just stop going. And so what happened I was in therapy in June before this happened, and still we were talking about other things, but not really that. I'd come back and my ex would say, "Oh, tell you to divorce? Can you hear me okay? Did he tell you to divorce me?" And so it was very negative. But then when I had the trauma of, him threatening me with a gun and me finally deciding to leave, it took that much. That's when I finally decided that I needed help. And so my son, when I left, lived in California, he said, "Come out for a couple of weeks." So I said, okay. I came out, and it ended up staying in California for a year. And at that point, I had a wonderful psychiatrist. And that was a turning point for me. Like, I'm out the door, and now it's time to get real. And that's when I started. But in the meantime, my children all have struggled in many different ways because of it, because we didn't face it. So I didn't do anything with the children, And at that point, too, I've spoken to each of my 4 children and asked for their forgiveness. Because I took responsibility for not doing some of the things that, if I was in my right mind, I would have done. But even my son Charlie, I forgot. It's in here somewhere. I just had it today. He wrote to me this morning, he said to me, "Mom," because he was one that really should not probably never even talk to me. He said, "Wow, Mom, sending prayers. Please call and let me know how it goes. I'm excited to hear. Take God with you. She's the best." And so at this point in my life, and my daughter who committed suicide, she struggled with trying to have a relationship with her father, and she would do things to maybe it would please him, and it just never worked out. And then finally he did something verbally abusive in her own home with her daughters. And so that ended that relationship with his granddaughters, and my daughter finally gave up. And then there's one son that feels Dad was just having bad days, and so he's disowned all of us. So, and it's sad, but paying it forward right now is very important to me. And to tell my story, and my dream is to help one person I never know. That help? What? Thank you.
As you look back on your life, is there something that a teacher or a physician or a church member could have said or done to help you recognize the problem sooner or to have provided you help sooner?
I don't think so. I think I was living the perfect charade. And it all looked so beautiful on the outside. And even one of my sons, just if he was struggling in school, and of course all the teachers, because my ex was a professor at the university in education, and so, they all thought he was, so everything was perfect. So I protected his good name. Imagine when he's threatening my son with a gun, I call the doctor, and he says, take your family back home and then go back to our place at Sebago Lake, just to protect his name. So no, I don't think, I'm not proud of it, but that's just how it was. Yes?
Hi there. I think it was incredibly powerful just seeing how the abuse became so normalized that, you would have an incident and end up going off to the movies and to church. It just fit in with the normal daily routine or how often it happened. It was so normal. That struck me.
It was denial. Living in denial. In fact, I was talking to my younger son the other day when we were talking what I was doing, and he said, Mom, I remember talking to you, and you just had this horrible, horrible experience with him, and it was really bad, and then I call you the next day, and you're going to Florida with him. It's like, that's... And what's really interesting about this time, we had guests coming for lunch the next day, and then we had people coming for 2 weeks, and then we were going to Ireland on a cruise. And for once in my life, I called the people that were going to have lunch the next day, and I left. And didn't wait till I got to Ireland or whatever. And I have in one of my writings how I felt when I pulled out of the driveway and the garage door went down. I really had a feeling that I was done. I wasn't going back. But it took 43 years. But it's never too late.
And one of the things I think of when I see this story is, because I hear you saying now, Mary Lou, that you wished you'd helped your kids more, or, living in denial. I mean, I think a lot of times when somebody is living with an abuser as cagey as Charlie was, as I understand, you have to compartmentalize to stay safe. And so, enduring the abuse while it happens, and then living at the times when you're not in that immediate danger and getting ready for the next time and caring for your children. I mean, I saw lots of examples in that video and in your story in which you are caring very much for your children, especially at that time. I mean, if you had divorced him, chances are he would have had the children. They still would have been in danger. So I always think it's important in a really general way to never categorize the answer to abuse as either leaving or staying, because the only person who controls the abuse is the abuser. And if he had wanted that abuse to continue even after you had left, you have no control over that. And so just in that more general way, just remembering that's where we need to focus our blame when we're thinking about issues of accountability, is on the person who's exhibiting those dangerous behaviors.
Hi, my name is Bonnie, and I have a question. I heard you talk about helping in the prison system in Cumberland County. I know you guys have been there because you've worked with me. But the thing is, when I was in Cumberland County, I was a federal inmate. And becoming a federal inmate, I got shut down from all services. And it kind of left me, very vulnerable while I was in prison. I tried to reach out through the emails, trying to get the local federal prison, because I was in Connecticut. and trying to get the local people that work with DV and stuff to come to the prison or at least talk to me, but there was no communication at all. And I came back. When I came back from federal prison, I was basically, my circumstance with abuse, I've had, I'm a survivor of domestic abuse, and I've been married to abusers, but I also was involved with human trafficking. And when I called the family crisis to see if I could get into a DV shelter when I got back from prison, they told me because my abuser wasn't there, I couldn't stay. My abuser wasn't right there, and I wasn't in immediate danger, that I couldn't stay at the DV shelter, which really upset me because it wasn't one abuser that I had with human trafficking, it was hundreds. And it was, scary at the time for me to stay in Portland. And thanks to Greater Portland Health and Preble Street, the workers there, I stayed safe as possible, but to this day, I still have to worry about those hundreds of people. And I'm wondering if your policies have changed, or is there any way for you guys to stay connected to women, because there's a lot more women now that are getting federal charges that come back to me, that if there's any way to stay connected with them.
And so you raise a couple of questions, and I don't know about the federal charges versus non-federal charges and how they link people with services. I don't know about that. I mean, I'm happy to get back to you if you want to give me your contact information after, or if there's any other experts in the room who might know about that. I'm looking at my coworkers. But as for the issue with shelter, it's really hard. We have a small family shelter in Portland. We serve about 100 people a year. The length of stay for shelter now is 4 or 5 months, and we prioritize people who are, and I don't know deeply about your experience, but to just generally explain our policy, we shelter people who are, fleeing abuse in the moment, are in hiding and that kind of thing. So I wish that we had been able to help you in that moment, and I am glad that you got other services. And I appreciate you saying here in this room that you are a person who's been victimized, because we know that there are many people in this room who have that experience, so thank you for that.
I just wanted to say I loved your story about when Charlie would go on his hunting trips, and you and your kids would kind of bust out and have some fun, and the Captain Crunch thing. I don't know. I loved it. I just wanted to say that really stuck out, and I thought it was beautiful, and it showed a lot of care and tenderness and understanding towards your children. So I'm sure those times that he was at hunting camp helped them. You were probably there more than you realized for them.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story. I am really struck by, in the movie, when you said that the guns were taken out of your house and then it was business as usual. And I know that to be true, at least many years ago. So my question is, does that still happen right now today? And if so, is it having to file an APO and that's the only way? Or, when something like this is reported, without an incident actually happening, somebody gets shot, somebody gets beat up that they can see, is there anything for that person to do?
So if you're saying specifically, is there something for somebody to do when, I'm sorry, the microphone has already been removed.
Well, like in Mary Lou's case, so they took the guns away and she went back to her house,
Right.
knowing that the guns might be gone, but the person who was using them was still there, which
Yes.
feels heinous to me.
Yes.
So is that still the case right now, if this happened today?
And it differs depending on jurisdiction and depending on the crime that was committed. When people are arrested for that crime, very often even if they're removed from the house, they might make bail and get out and then go back to the home. And it would depend on the bail conditions in that moment as to what they were able to do. And then very often people will seek a protection order, which again might limit the perpetrator's ability to go back to the house or go in other places and get close to the person who's been victimized. It depends on the situation. But I would say that I think things are a lot better than what I hear Mary Lou describe, although I never make promises about other systems.
Yes, because what was done was that he was declared a danger to himself and others. And so my daughter went with the police in the house and got all the guns. And then he had to go to Maine Med for a couple of days for observation. And my therapist talks to me a great deal about white-collar mental illness and how different it's treated. And I mean, he had his doctorate in education, but they were calling him Dr. Smith this and Dr. Smith that. And he had his blue button-down collar shirt and his khaki pants, and he was, you know, like not a celebrity, but he was, you know, treated quite well. And later, I gave permission to my therapist to call his psychiatrist, and she felt rebuffed by him in the fact that, you know, this is Charlie Smith, you know, he's okay, and nothing for me. And so that was an issue that was, and the fact, maybe I should have had him arrested too. You know, at that point, you just don't know. But my daughter took the bull by the horns. Ma, this is enough. You know, he's threatened you. So at least that. But you know, he passed away a year or two ago. But he went to his grave, always believing when I was coming back, and he didn't do anything wrong. So.
I mean, I think it is always a problem of so-called credibility, and we still see it today that more powerful men are seen as more credible, and we as a society are often loath to admit when they've done things. We like to believe that when we look at somebody, we know what kind of a person that they are. And one of the biggest lessons I have had in my life is to learn that I have no idea when I meet somebody, when I see somebody, when I work with them, what kind of an intimate partner they are and how they are behind closed doors with their spouse. We really, as a society, have to get better at acknowledging that we don't know, and that when somebody comes forward, that believing that person's really important.
I'll just chime in as well to add, just, you know, in terms of the shame and stigma as well of reporting or even identifying as a victim. That, you know, I feel like I've been fortunate to learn from so many people, some of, you know, whom are with us today, or I, you know, still see regularly, who have talked about the ways that their, you know, path through trauma and healing have been interrupted or suppressed because they felt that they couldn't be honest about what they've experienced. And, you know, there's so many reasons for people to use substances, so I don't want to make like a big generalization here. I really don't. But I do know with, you know, some of the folks that I work with in one of the programs I manage, you know, we talk to people about adverse childhood experiences, and it's really common for people to have many of those, and for people to have like really legitimate reasons to want to, you know, block some of that stuff out and not feel that pain because it hasn't been listened to in any other channel.
Hi. I was just wondering, did Charlie come from a line of abuse from his mother or father or guardian?
We often wonder that. He was the oldest of five, and there's a lot of anger and with his sisters, but nothing that anyone would tell us. So it's a good question, but I believe there must have been, because he had two brothers that were angry and a couple of sisters too that would get really fierce angry. So, and the son that doesn't speak to me, he's black and white and always right, and so I pray that someday we'll get together again, but in the meantime, I have to take care of myself.
It also sounds like he had a strong sense of entitlement and a belief system that he had a right to have control in the home. And even as he was portraying himself as being a great guy in the community, in the house, he acted really differently. So I was thinking, we were talking about anger. If he wasn't angry with people, he was angry. Oh, blinking. Oh, he was angry with, you know, he was exhibiting his anger in a controlling way with you.
Well, that's it, because he was told he had to go to anger management, And, you know, talking with my therapist too, I mean, he did have anger management before he went to anger management, because he could, you know, turn it one way or the other. He knew when to use it, when not to.
Any other questions or comments for Rebecca and Mary Lou?
I just have one more thing I wanted to say.
Or any questions or comments from Rebecca? Go for it.
I just realized that I wanted to say that Through These Doors also has a batterers intervention program because we do believe that abuse is a choice, and so if a person who's being abusive wants to make other choices, and particularly in our program, most of the people in the group, it's part of their sentence to attend our batterers intervention program, and it's an education program. So I wanted to add that in as one of our services, that it is an option for people who have been choosing to be abusive and want to make different choices.
And I'll just leave these down there if anyone wants a copy of it.
The question of how successful batterers programs are is the big question. And there are, because we've been doing them now for, gosh, I think probably 25 years, I think we're starting to get some information about that in terms of reoffending. You never really know how people behave, as I was saying. So I don't think that it's necessarily a goal for us to make people who are being abusive into the model husband, but limiting the abuse is an important goal, and there was a study done in the state of Maine about 2 years ago that indicated that for the men, and this was about the men who've been attending and completed the program, that there was a reduced rate of reoffense, which I just want to restate. It does not mean that they're not being abusive in all the ways that we know abuse happens, but being arrested again for reoffense did reduce for the men who had completed the program. And that was the sort of the first study that we've done in Maine about that. I think there are other studies around the nation, but that's a great question.
All right, thanks everyone. I think we will close up early. Thank you.